In episode 5 of our Control in AI series, we explain why standard antitrust tools, market definition, SSNIP tests, price indices, break down in AI markets. You'll learn about the tariff system, economies of scale and scope, stacked demand, emergent switching costs, and why competition in AI is driven far more by quality and capability than by price. This episode shows how the structure of AI markets creates unique challenges for regulators and why the usual playbook simply doesn't work.
Imagine, for just a second, that you are a traffic cop, right? And you're trying to write speeding tickets.
Okay, I'm with it.
But the cars you're trying to pull over, they literally shapeshift into airplanes the moment you look at them.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like you point your radar gun at a sedan and suddenly it's, I don't know, a helicopter.
Yeah.
You try to write down the license plate and it turns into a submarine.
That's completely wild.
It's nuts. And
Yeah.
that mind-bending frustration, that is essentially what global market regulators are facing today as they try to police artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it is a complete breakdown of the established tools. I mean, the entire framework of market regulation, it's built on things remaining, stable, visible, easily categorized.
Right.
But the fundamental nature of this technology just it resists all of those constraints.
Totally. And, keeping in mind that today is Thursday, June 11th, 2026, the sheer speed of that technological evolution is staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at an economic landscape that is just morphing right in front of us, which brings us to our deep dive for today.
Yes.
We are exploring this really fascinating piece of research from EconWorks, and it's titled The Price of Intelligence: Why AI Breaks Standard Antitrust Tools.
Such a good piece.
It really is. And this builds on some of the themes we've been tracking for you all recently, like the Musk OpenAI dispute over control or, the MetaManus transaction.
Right.
We've definitely seen that the foundational model layer is like the new center of global power.
Yeah, and those earlier situations, they really highlighted the battles over ownership.
Yeah.
But the EconWorks authors, they argue that before regulators can even begin to assess monopolies or unfair control, they are crashing into a much more basic structural problem.
Yeah.
A problem with how the economics of AI actually operate from the ground up.
Exactly. So our mission today is to figure out why the traditional rules of business competition, the very tools that governments have relied on for literally decades to keep markets fair, why they are completely falling apart when applied to AI.
It's a huge shift.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the absolute most basic question a regulator asks when they launch an antitrust investigation, which is simply, what is the price of the product?
And right out of the gate, AI turns that really simple question into a trap.
A trap.
Yeah, because AI doesn't have a single observable price tag. I mean, instead of a straightforward transaction, the EconWorks text details how AI providers operate on this layered tariff system.
See, when I hear the phrase tariff system, I immediately think of international trade or like shipping taxes.
Right, totally.
But we are talking about software access here. So let's walk through how these layers actually look for, you and me when we interact with a model.
Sure. So think of it as a stack of different pricing models, and they're all operating simultaneously. They're interacting with each other to sell the exact same underlying technology.
Okay.
At the very foundation, you have the free tiers. These typically have usage limits, or maybe they give you access to a slightly older model.
Like the basic version everyone tries first.
Exactly. And the goal there is simple: get you into the ecosystem, gather your usage data, and eventually, hopefully, push you toward an upgrade.
Right, which is where you step up to the subscription layer, like that $20 a month for the pro version of a chatbot.
Spot on. Which maybe gives you, faster response times or higher limits on really complex queries.
Makes sense.
But that really only covers the front-end consumer. Sitting right alongside that is usage-based pricing, specifically for developers.
Oh, right, the APIs.
Yes, this is API access, where a software builder is paying like fractions of a cent per token.
And a token is basically...
It's basically paying for every syllable or like every piece of an image the AI generates. Or they're paying per API call, which is every time their external application asks the foundational model a question.
Got it. So that's the developer side, but then you scale that up to the corporate level, right? With
Right.
enterprise licensing.
Yes. That involves seat-based pricing for an entire company's workforce. And that is usually combined with heavily negotiated high-volume usage rates that honestly aren't even made public.
Wow, okay, so it's all behind closed doors.
Exactly.
Right.
And finally, sitting at the very top of this whole stack is what the research calls emerging agent pricing.
Emerging agent pricing. Okay, what is that?
This is a fundamental shift. So instead of paying for access time or paying per word generated, you are literally paying for a completed task.
Wait, really?
Yeah, you pay for the outcome of a workflow that's executed by an autonomous system.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second just to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
If we're just talking about layering different prices, right? Like base fares, upgrades, bulk discounts, free samples. I mean, airlines and credit cards, they already do this all the time.
They do, yeah.
Airlines charge a base fare, then they charge you for a window seat or, a check bag, priority boarding. Credit cards have annual fees but give you usage-based cash back. So why is AI causing such a unique headache for regulators? Isn't this just the standard tech playbook just applied to a new service?
Well, it looks similar on the surface, for sure. But the underlying mechanism is entirely different.
How so?
Think about it. Airlines are selling a physical reality. A physical seat on a physical plane with a very hard limit on capacity.
Right. They can only fit so many people.
Exactly. And even traditional tech platforms, they are selling discrete software tools. But AI providers, they are selling a purely unbounded digital product that's built on a single core capability, which is intelligence.
Wow. Intelligence as the actual product.
Yes. And because there is no single fixed price attached to a discrete physical limit, the standard antitrust tools, they just completely short-circuit.
So how does that short circuit actually happen in practice? Like, what happens when a regulator tries to apply an old tool to this new tariff system?
So the best example from the text is this classic regulatory test called the SSNIP framework.
SSNIP.
Yeah, SSNIP. It stands for Small but Significant and Non-Transitory Increase in Price.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is. But basically, a regulator looks at a market and says, hey, if the company making this blender raises the price by 5%, do buyers switch to a different brand?
Right.
And if they don't, you might have a monopoly on your hands. But try running that hypothetical price increase test on an intelligence provider.
Oh, I see. You wouldn't even know which lever to pull. Like, do you test a 5% increase on the enterprise seat cost, the developer API cost, the monthly subscription fee?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, all those levers are completely connected. I mean, if an AI company raises the API cost for developers, does that just push more startups to build their own smaller models?
Right.
Or if they raise the subscription fee, does that just push more users down to the free tier, which then generates more training data, which actually makes the enterprise product more valuable?
And allows them to raise enterprise prices later. That is wild.
It's all deeply entangled. There's literally no isolated variable to test.
Wow. So because the price is so fluid and basically impossible to pin down, regulators are forced to shift their focus to the physical product itself.
Right.
But as we're about to see, the product refuses to stay in one shape either.
No, it doesn't. And this brings us to the twin economic engines that are really driving the entire AI industry.
Let's hear them.
The EconWorks piece highlights these two forces that are operating at just an unprecedented scale. And they are economies of scale and economies of scope.
Okay, let's examine the mechanics of those two engines, starting with scale.
So the first one, economies of scale. This refers to the supply side. Building a frontier AI model, it requires billions of dollars in upfront capital.
Oh, yeah. We hear about the compute costs all the time.
Yeah, you have to buy massive clusters of specialized hardware, you have to secure enormous amounts of energy, and of course, hire the most expensive engineering talent in the world.
Right.
It is an astronomical fixed cost. But, and this is the key, once that massive computational brain is actually trained and turned on, the cost to serve one extra user, which we call the marginal cost,
is essentially zero.
Exactly. It's basically zero. You spend $10 billion building the system, but letting one more person use it costs you fractions of a cent.
So it's a huge barrier to entry, but almost free to distribute once you're inside.
Exactly.
But the second engine, the economies of scope, that feels like the real headache for anyone trying to define what this technology actually is.
It really is. The economies of scope are what make AI fundamentally different from any previous software revolution.
How do you mean?
It means that one single multi-billion-dollar asset can efficiently power dozens of entirely different products and use cases all simultaneously.
So if we look at traditional manufacturing, it's kind of like spending a fortune to build a massive state-of-the-art factory.
Right.
But instead of just churning out one model of a car, this one factory can instantly shape-shift its assembly line to produce, like bicycles or commercial airplanes or kitchen toasters at the push of a button, and with absolutely no extra retooling cost or downtime.
That factory logic, it captures the dynamic perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, you have one foundational model sitting on a server farm,
Mm-hmm.
but look at what it becomes for the end user, depending entirely on the prompt.
Right.
The text lists the sheer variety here. For one person, it's a conversational therapist or a tutor. For a software engineer, it's an advanced coding assistant actively debugging their work.
Right.
For a scientist, it's a medical research tool parsing thousands of journals. For the general public, it's replacing traditional search engines. It's generating highly realistic marketing images. And now, like we mentioned, it's powering autonomous workflow agents that navigate the web.
And it's doing all of that simultaneously, pulling from the exact same core brain.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is the absolute regulatory chaos this creates.
I can imagine.
The foundation of antitrust law, it relies on defining a stable market boundary. A regulator needs to draw a box around a market and declare, hey, we're evaluating the competitors inside this specific box.
Like the smartphone market or the airline market.
Exactly. But how do you draw a box around a general-purpose technology that shape-shifts depending on the specific words a user types into a text box?
You can't. You would have to draw like 100 different boxes. And by the time you finish defining the legal research market or the image generation market, the underlying AI model would have learned to do 100 new things that don't fit into any of them.
Exactly. It is a product that actively resists categorization and that renders market share calculations completely unreliable.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've established that the product is a shapeshifter, right? And the price is a moving target.
Yeah.
Now, we need to look at who is actually buying this shapeshifting product, because the AI providers, they are playing a very deliberate double game when it comes to the demand side of the equation.
They absolutely are. And to understand this double game, the source text uses a really helpful car analogy to separate the two distinct modes of AI demand.
Okay.
You have the final consumers and you have the integrated businesses.
Let's start with the final consumers, like the everyday people, you and me, using AI to draft an email or plan a vacation itinerary or summarize a long article.
Right, so the consumers are like everyday drivers. If they don't like their car, they can pretty easily switch to a new one. For a consumer using a web-based AI interface, the switching costs are effectively zero. If one platform is, say, experiencing high latency today, or if a competitor releases a slightly smarter model tomorrow, the consumer just opens a new browser tab and starts typing there instead.
Right. There is very little friction and almost no brand loyalty.
Exactly. But the businesses, they operate under a completely different set of physical realities. The text compares them to massive car rental fleets.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, when a rental company buys vehicles, they buy in massive bulk from one or two manufacturers.
Right.
They do this to standardize their maintenance, to streamline their employee training, and simplify their fleet management software. In the AI world, businesses aren't just opening a web tab. They are using AI as a core structural input.
Wow.
They are hardwiring the AI model's API directly into their proprietary customer databases, their payment routing systems, and like their daily employee workflows.
And the mechanism of that lock-in is severe. I mean, if a business spends 6 months building custom software that relies on the specific reasoning style or formatting outputs and latency of Model A, they can't just flip a switch and write everything through Model B if they get annoyed.
No, absolutely not.
Untangling that back-end architecture, that would require teams of engineers, weeks of downtime, and massive financial cost.
The switching costs for businesses emerge gradually, but they become ironclad. On day one of prototyping, sure, switching is easy. But by month 6, when your entire global customer service platform relies on a specific model's API infrastructure, you are completely dependent.
This brings up a strategic question, though.
Okay.
If I am running an AI company, why would I bother giving away a free tier to a fickle, everyday consumer who might abandon me tomorrow? Why wouldn't I just dedicate all my compute power to the enterprise businesses who are deeply integrating my model and actually writing the multi-million-dollar checks?
It's a great question. But the answer is that the AI providers, they don't have to choose between the two. In fact, cutting off the free consumer would be a fatal strategic error.
Really? Why?
What the providers do instead is called stacking demand. They serve both the everyday consumer and the deeply integrated business simultaneously, because each group secretly subsidizes and strengthens the offering for the other.
Okay, Explain the mechanics of that loop, because how does my free usage of a chatbot to write, like, a grocery list help a massive corporate client running a global logistics network?
It creates a symbiotic, self-reinforcing flywheel. Everyday consumers, they bring rapid, widespread adoption. And because they are just playing around, they are constantly experimenting.
Right.
They're trying weird edge case prompts, and they're pushing the boundaries of the system in ways engineers could literally never predict.
Oh, I see.
Most importantly, millions of consumers interacting with the model provide a mountain of continuous feedback data. They correct the AI when it's wrong, they rate responses, they essentially act as a massive, unpaid quality assurance team.
Oh, wow. So they are continuously training the brain to be safer, smarter, and more nuanced.
Yes. Now, because the foundational model is getting vastly smarter and more reliable, thanks to all that consumer data, the large businesses feel confident enough to integrate it.
Got it.
And the businesses, they bring the steady, massive revenue streams and the deep, high-volume computational demand. That massive influx of corporate revenue then allows the AI provider to buy more specialized hardware to train an even better, larger model.
Which then attracts even more free consumers, which generates even better data, which attracts even bigger enterprise contracts. It's a massive loop.
Exactly. The text actually mentions Amazon and AWS as a historical parallel for this exact kind of stack demand.
That's a brilliant analog. I mean, Amazon built a massive retail interface to sell books and goods directly to individual shoppers, right?
Right.
But underneath that, they built a massive cloud computing infrastructure, AWS, which they rent out to huge enterprises like Netflix or government agencies.
Yep.
The consumer side and the massive enterprise side share the exact same underlying supply chain and server farms.
Exactly.
So the massive scale of one makes the other cheaper, faster, and more efficient. AI companies are just replicating this exact structural dominance, but they're doing it at warp speed.
At absolute warp speed.
So bringing all of this together paints a very clear picture of a regulator's ultimate nightmare. I mean, you are dealing with layered, entangled prices.
Yeah.
You have a fluid product that refuses to stay in one market category, and you have stacked demand where free consumer data funds enterprise dominance. How on earth does a government agency ensure fair play in an environment that complex?
The short answer is they're struggling profoundly. And primarily, it's because of the extreme speed at which this market is evolving.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the history of antitrust, whether it's the evolution of the personal computer, telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, those markets evolved gradually over years and decades.
Now they had time.
Regulators had time to study historical data, measure how a new product impacted a local market, and slowly draft rules.
But AI capabilities are completely redefining themselves in a matter of months. I mean, a frontier model released in January might be entirely obsolete by September.
Totally.
There is literally no historical data for a regulator to analyze because the capability didn't even exist last year.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the EconWorks piece weaves together a series of profound implications for the future of antitrust enforcement.
What are they?
So, if regulators want to step in, their first hurdle is defining the market, which means they must evaluate AI based on specific use case layers rather than treating artificial intelligence as a single monolithic industry.
Meaning they have to isolate the medical research AI layer from the coding assistant AI layer, even if the exact same server farm is powering both.
Exactly. Furthermore, their demand analysis has to strictly distinguish between the final consumers and the businesses.
Why is that so critical?
Because if a regulator only surveys consumers, the market looks highly competitive. Right. Because switching is easy.
Right.
But if they only survey businesses, it looks like a concentrated monopoly because of that deep API lock-in.
That makes a lot of sense. But even if a regulator manages to map out the use cases and untangle the consumer business dynamic, they crash into a much wilder reality here. The text points out that AI isn't just competing with other software, it is actively substituting human labor.
And that is a massive structural shift in how we view competition.
It's huge.
Standard business regulation evaluates how Company A competes with Company B. It looks at Ford versus Chevy. It generally does not factor in a product actively replacing the workforce itself as a competitive dynamic.
Right.
When an AI replaces a junior developer or a paralegal, it isn't competing in the software tools market anymore. It is competing in the labor market.
Wow.
And antitrust law doesn't have a clean mechanism to evaluate a software update that instantly absorbs the responsibilities of a human analyst.
And that labor substitution ties directly into another major point from the text, right? The fact that competition in this space is driven overwhelmingly by quality, not price. Regulators are historically obsessed with price gouging. They always ask, will this monopoly artificially raise prices to hurt consumers?
But with AI, capability is the primary competitive variable, not the dollar amount. It's about accuracy. It's about reasoning capability, reliability, and speed.
Because, think about it. If a developer saves $10 on compute costs by switching to a cheaper model, but that cheaper model hallucinates a bug that crashes their entire payment gateway, the $10 savings is totally irrelevant.
Exactly. The mechanism of harm is just different. If an AI provider keeps their price flat, but their model's reasoning capabilities degrade or they become heavily biased, the consumer is still deeply harmed.
Yeah.
And finally, regulators have to look at dynamic compounding advantages. They have to see the whole board, basically.
Yeah.
How raw computational scale, continuous learning from millions of users, and deep business integration, how all of that compounds over time to create an unbeatable competitive moat.
So what does this all mean for you? Why does a deep dive into antitrust economics matter to your daily routine?
Yeah, why does it?
Well, it matters because every single time you log onto a free AI interface to help draft an email, or every time your company announces they're integrating a new automated agent into your workflow, you are actively participating in a radically new economic system.
You really are.
It is a world where standard supply and demand curves are totally obsolete, where the product refuses to be defined, and where pure cognitive capability is the new global currency.
And this raises an important question as we look to the horizon.
Right.
If the traditional tools of antitrust are fundamentally broken by these foundational models, what happens when we move beyond these conversational chatbots?
Right.
What happens when we fully enter the era of autonomous agentic systems? AI that can spend money, negotiate contracts, and execute long-term plans on our behalf.
Or what happens when the wildly unpredictable, decentralized nature of open source models violently clashes with these heavily funded corporate walled gardens?
We really have to wonder if human AI interfaces will require entirely new laws of economics to be written from scratch. We are left pondering who really holds the ultimate power in the next generation of the internet, especially when the very tools our governments use to measure power, they just no longer function.
It is enough to make you long for the days of just walking into a physical store and buying a product with a clear printed price tag.
Yeah, right.
But that is the reality of the intelligence era. The rules of the game are being rewritten as we speak. We want to encourage you to keep asking these hard questions, keep looking past the surface of the technology you use every day, and most importantly, stay curious. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at Econ Works, thanks for listening.